This video is sponsored in part by YouGov.
Mr.Beat presents Supreme Court Briefs.
Minneapolis, Minnesota, 1927. J. Neer and Howard Guilford began publishing a newspaper called the Saturday Press. They devoted much of the newspaper's content to basically just attacking people they didn't like. Their newspaper was straight up fake news, man. It just made up stuff. And when it talked trash, it was usually being racist, anti-Semitic, or just overall xenophobic. Specifically, the newspaper claimed that Jewish gangs were running Minneapolis and that local politicians were doing all kinds of shady stuff. Wait, politicians? You see, attacking ordinary citizens didn't get them in much trouble, or much readership for that matter. But when Neer and Guilford began targeting the powerful, that's when people began to be quite upset with the Saturday Press. The two politicians the newspaper attacked the most were George Leach, the mayor of Minneapolis, and Floyd Olson, the Hennepin County attorney and a future Minnesota governor. To say that people were upset would be an understatement. In fact, shortly after the first issue of the Saturday Press came out, someone shot Guilford, nearly killing him. However, I should say, it wasn't all fake news and nasty rumors. The Saturday Press did actual investigative journalism as well. One story even led to a gang leader being convicted of extortion. Regardless, the newspaper was so controversial that some people tried to prevent its future publication, and Floyd Olson was one of these people. He filed a complaint against Neer and Guilford under the Minnesota Gag Law, a law which made it illegal to create a, quote, public nuisance by publishing, selling, or distributing a newspaper that viciously hurt the reputation of folks. In other words, this was a censorship law that was meant to prevent defamation. Censorship is the act of preventing stuff from getting published. Defamation is the act of hurting someone's reputation. Well, Judge Matthias Baldwin of the Hennepin County District Court sided with Olson, stating that the Saturday Press was indeed a, quote, public nuisance. Judge Baldwin ordered it to stop publishing. In response, Neer appealed to the Minnesota Supreme Court. Neer's lawyer argued that the Minnesota Gag Law went against the First Amendment, specifically the part that says government can't limit the freedom of the press. Hello? Oh, and thanks to the landmark United States Supreme Court case Gitlow v. New York decision a few years prior, the 14th Amendment also protected a citizen's speech if a state government tried to restrict it. However, the Minnesota Supreme Court disagreed, upholding the Minnesota Gag Law and arguing that the newspaper not only created a nuisance but also endangered public safety. For real. The case returned to the Hennepin County District Court, and once again that court upheld the law. But wait, sonny boy, this ain't over yet. Neer and Guilford appealed again to the Minnesota Supreme Court, this time arguing that the first decision went too far because now they had no right to publish any kind of newspaper. The Minnesota Supreme Court once again agreed with the lower court, clarifying that Neer and Guilford indeed could publish another newspaper as long as it was, quote, in harmony with the public welfare. Neer and Guilford appealed again. Goodness, appeal much? This time to the United States Supreme Court, who agreed to hear oral arguments on January 30th, 1930. Yep, this was a freedom of the press issue. The court had to determine if the Minnesota Gag Law went against the Freedom of Press Clause of the First Amendment. On June 1st, 1931, it announced that the law did go against the First Amendment. Whoa. Yep, it sided with Neer. That said, this was a close case, as you can see, with just a 5-4 majority. The court ruled that censorship almost always went against the First Amendment, and it used the incorporation of the Bill of Rights doctrine under the 14th Amendment to justify that state legislatures also can't make censorship laws. Chief Justice Charles Hughes wrote the majority opinion, arguing that even if freedom of the press leads to inflammatory and malicious stuff getting printed, that doesn't mean 2019 censorship was okay, he wrote, quote, "A more serious evil would result if public officials could determine which stories can be published." Now, that all said, Hughes did say that individuals could still sue Neer and Guilford for defamation. Justice Pierce Butler wrote the minority opinion, mainly just arguing that the 14th Amendment did not give the federal courts power to declare a state censorship law unconstitutional. Neer v. Minnesota made prior restraint, which means courts suppressing media because it hurts society, much more difficult. It was the first major case to tackle attempts to limit what gets published. It was certainly a win for freedom of the press, but it's also why so many media outlets publish fake news today. After winning the case, Neer went back to publishing fake news in the Saturday Press, all right. Guilford also stayed in journalism, continuing to talk trash about gang leaders. This ultimately led to him getting murdered in a drive-by shooting on September 6, 1934. I'll see you for the next Supreme Court case, jury. Opinions are like boogers. Everybody's got them, so you might as well share them on YouGov. YouGov is my favorite way to take surveys and make extra cash and earn rewards. I originally began taking them because I was stuck in line at the DMV. It's just a great, quick way to answer questions and get rewarded for it. I often do it when I'm in the waiting room, for example. And the rewards, baby. YouGov recently helped me get a gift card. I'm being serious right now, look at that. Anyway, YouGov is free to join and so easy to get extra cash. As a member, you'll earn points for giving your actual opinions that matter by completing short surveys and polls. So be heard and get rewarded for it. Tap my link in the description to start taking surveys and earn cash with YouGov. Thanks to YouGov for sponsoring this video.
Oh, we are so back.
Please let me know in the comments which Supreme Court cases you'd like for me to cover next for this series. Also, don't forget, I wrote a book about the Supreme Court. In it, I go through the history of the Supreme Court in a way that's hopefully easy for you to understand. I also go through 100 Supreme Court cases that you should visit before you die. That's right, this isn't just a history book, it's a travel book. Get it? Because you're traveling through time. I always have to explain my jokes. That's probably not a good sign. Thanks for staying curious, though.